Hi, my name is Roy Griffin. My call sign is W4RJG, and I live in South Boston, Virginia. Today for EDM, we'll be talking about P2P. What is P2P? What is its purpose? And how do we use it within EDM? P2P is an abbreviation for peer-to-peer or person-to-person chatting, people chatting, and point-to-point. It has a few specific definitions, though, in technology, but generally it's pretty easy to understand. It's one-on-one. No one else is allowed in. It's kind of like Maxwell Smart's cone of silence, but working well. The entire telephone system is based on peer-to-peer, even though it itself is a highly complex network. Each caller calls one person. Now let's ignore other capabilities like conference calls. And when the mainframe computers started connecting over transmission lines, P2P was the only way we could do that. The original high-speed network was called NDM. Sound familiar? It connected to other nodes, which were mainframes. And it was one computer at a time. P2P. This is to show the same terminology does not mean the same technology is used. In amateur radio, many times we are in a peer-to-peer mode. It's one operator in conversation with another, and others are not joining in. Now that can be over a single sideband, CW, and of course lots of digital modes. P2P can be viewed a few different ways, and each one is valid in their own way. In the first responder emergency communication realm, specific protocols are followed, and there can be many units on the repeater together, but one P2P communication is allowed. That ensures an orderly flow of information that is accurate by the sender and receiver. And all that is based on and established and made sure it happens by a solid dispatcher role within a police, fire, and EMS. Or as we know it within our world, the network control station role. Typically means a repeater locally, but it could be, of course, an HF network. First responders in larger communities can send out a communication unit to handle heavy traffic locally for larger deployments. All of that would be on simplex. But that is there when all else fails backup system, and it is still P2P because the dispatcher is still making sure it's a P2P mode of communication, one station at a time. And we use repeaters or simplex, and it will be a P2P operation when it's restricted by the technology or not if we have that same operation going. This is to help showcase that even when amateur radio community is using the same terminology, it will not be the same use of technology used. A repeater kind of forces it. You go on HF, on sideband, there's no forcing it, but the NCS will make sure that that's the way it should be happening. So in essence, P2P is two things, and it is possibly a specific technology in use as one of those things, like VAR-AC or WinLink P2P, but the other thing is that it's always a practice of one-to-one with no one in between. How do we use it within EDM? We promote the use of two specific digital communication programs for efficient, when all else fails, P2P messaging capability. Direct, thus our name, MCOM Direct Messaging. And those two packages are VAR-AC and WinLink in a P2P mode. They both use a VARA protocol on HF and FM. And if you find other P2P modes that are already in place for ongoing messaging that work for you, already established in your area, like the W1GHK NBEM scenario, we don't discourage its use. VARA, however, does give some direct benefits. Now, there are two levels of P2P communication during an initial disaster, whether it's local or a larger region. The when all else fails scenario. The first level, as in any emergency, is situational awareness and impact. As amateur radio operators looking to support your served agency, remember you do not self-deploy, but you would like to know what resources you can make available for them, or for your community, you want to be aware of who else is available. All of the methods are expected to have failed. The phones, repeaters, internet, anything. The EDM design is using VAR-AC as the way to find each other. Other than the one-way broadcast feature, VAR-AC is P2P only when communicating with others. It is P2P with only one station connection to another one at a time. But in VAR-AC, you can find out who else is available to connect to, part of its unique features, which is why we recommend it. Here is a view of how the initial process can look like. For this scenario, we have 5 stations in our visual example, and every station gets itself up and running when all else fails. And the call-up process begins to find out who else is there. And there we are. Stations 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Red flags are up, which means they have power, ready to go. And they all fire up VAR AC on their frequencies as designed. Now, it should be done based on the plan in the EOP and with the preset related ICS and ICS 217 forms to help speed up the call-up process. Where to go, when to go, what mode to use. And in the next graphic, number 1 starts the beacon and the broadcast and with the expected character strings as needed. We described that in other videos such as the beginning of 2023, the first 3 videos that we have. So here, picture yourself as number 1. You're number 1. You don't know the others that are out there yet, so you want to know. So you fire up, you start beaconing, you start broadcasting, there goes the green arrow, you're going out. Stations 2, 3, 4, and 5 are there, and while you started your VAR AC call-up process, so now the others have. And so here we show you, number 1, you're able to contact number 3 and 4. And as amateur radio line of sight or other way stations get to hear each other, you don't hear number 2, nor does they hear you. So here we have, you're connecting with 3 and 4. Number 2, even though it's closer, you don't see it, you don't hear it, and it can go that way at times for any number of reasons, emergency or not. And there's number 5, much further away, but they're out there as well, trying to say, here I am. Suddenly, you now lose number 3, and they're out of your linkage. And the other stations contact each other, and when all the other stations know who else is there, you can move on to your next levels using the WinLink P2P. In this scenario, all else is still failing. Now, the call-up process can take 15 or 30 minutes. Depends upon the various factors for your area. Now, this is not a rule, but it's a guidance, and it could be less too. But don't take more than 30 minutes. That's way too long to start figuring out who else is out there to start making your initial response plans. So, in this example, we have you speaking to number 4. Number 4 connects to number 5, and number 2 is connecting to number 3. But of course, 2 and 3 don't know what's happening with those other 3 stations and vice versa. So there's number 4, they're in connection, and they're in the middle. Now, once the communication triage is accomplished, then secure that by asking everyone to stay put. In this case, that would be number 4 kind of acting then as NCS, because they're the ones that are communicating with the most other stations, going by the preset plans that are there. The other quick communications that can be accomplished is done in VAR AC and should be done with a pre-planned process because you have messaging, direct messaging capability, a little bit of broadcast if that's the best way, using alert strings, and then of course you have VMail as a way to pass along a little more complicated messages, if you will, and you don't want it to be misinterpreted, and it can be relayed along. But once all that's done, it's time to move on for the next level of the P2P mode communication. That next level is when all else is still failing, and WinLink P2P is now the method for formal communication. Using peer-to-peer contacting, formal communications is established with ease. Now, as a reminder, you are not to self-deploy. You must always, as part of that plan, is wait to find out who should deploy from your area based on what the need is from your served agencies. Now, when all else fails, somebody may need to go do a face-to-face contact, but let's say number 4 goes, but number 4 can say, I am connecting with this person and this person, so I can offer you now 3 resources according to your needs. In our EDM Target Station Groups IO files, there is some great documentation via HF P2P instructions. They're really great. They're in detail. There are 2 documents that work together. And I'll show you how EDM uses WinLink in the P2P mode. And for those who don't know, look for the trick in how to create a message once for all. If you have any questions about a P2P in general, or specifically about VAR AC and WinLink, then start a chat. This way, that conversation stays focused just within that chat. Or you can post a message in the Groups IO, of course. And we thank you for your participation in EDM, both the training and in the exercises itself. We wish you well, have a great day, and 73.